The Young and the Restless spoilers shock. The death of Cole Howard in The Young and the Restless has left the residents of Genoa City reeling, especially those closest to him, like Victoria and his daughter, Claire. His sudden and tragic passing from Legionnaire's disease, a severe form of pneumonia, was not only a shock but a heartbreaking event that no one in his family was prepared for. Despite being transferred to a specialized hospital for pneumonia treatment, Cole's battle was short-lived, and he succumbed to the illness, leaving a void that would be felt by all who knew him. Cole's final goodbye. It was a bittersweet moment when Cole, after a valiant struggle against his illness, was able to say his final goodbyes. As the life drained from him, he had the chance to express his love for his family, including his beloved daughter, Claire, and his former partner, Victoria. For Claire, the closure was both a gift and a curse. While she could finally say goodbye, the grief of losing her father at such a young age was an emotional blow that would be difficult for her to process. For Victoria, Cole's death marked the end of a chapter she had desperately wanted to rewrite. Their reunion had been short-lived, and now, in his final moments, they were left only with memories of what could have been. Victoria could only hold on to the last words of Cole, the soft touch of his hand as he drifted away, and the devastating knowledge that her chance at a future with him had slipped away too soon. Despite the overwhelming sadness, the moment of farewell, though tragic, was important. It was a brief, fleeting moment of closure that allowed the family to grieve but also to reflect on the love and the bond they shared. The fact that Cole was able to speak with them one last time meant the world, providing them with a sense of finality they would otherwise never have had. Claire's struggle with loss. After Cole's death, Claire found herself in a whirlwind of emotions that she was struggling to control. Initially, she fled from the hospital room, overwhelmed by the weight of what had just happened. Her father, her last connection to a family she had already lost in so many ways, was gone. In the moments following his death, Claire was unable to contain her emotions, running out of the hospital in a desperate attempt to escape the overwhelming pain. But as with all grief, no matter how hard one tries to flee, it eventually catches up with them. Claire returned home, where she found Victoria waiting for her. The house that was once filled with the joy of a family now felt empty and cold. The loss of Cole hung over every corner of their home, and Victoria, despite her own grief, stepped into the role of comforter for Claire. Claire's immediate reaction, running away from the grief, was a defense mechanism, a way to cope with the pain that she wasn't ready to face. Victoria, though broken herself, took on the task of supporting Claire through the difficult days ahead. She knew how essential it was for Claire to not face this devastating loss alone. But as much as Victoria tried to comfort her daughter, the emotional strain began to show. It would be hard for either of them to truly begin healing from this loss without taking the time to mourn and process their feelings. The strain of distance, Victoria's struggle in the south of France with Cole's passing, Victoria found herself more isolated than ever, both physically and emotionally. Her closest family members were not nearby, and the distance between her and her loved ones felt more pronounced as she found herself in the south of France, far from the support system she so desperately needed. The days following Cole's death would be the most difficult for Victoria as she tried to navigate her grief while also keeping the facade of composure for Claire's sake. With her family unable to immediately come to her aid in such a trying time, Victoria was left to lean on herself and the few people who remained close to her. So, who would Victoria turn to during this emotional turmoil? As she struggled to cope with the loss of Cole, the answer to that question might be someone unexpected. Holden Novak's role, a source of comfort? As Claire leans on Holden Novak for support in the wake of Cole's passing, it's not unimaginable that Victoria, too, could turn to him. Holden, with his flirtatious demeanor and emotional complexity, could be just the kind of person to provide Victoria with the emotional respite she needs. Although Holden's role in Victoria's life has been largely peripheral, the tragedy of Cole's death could force these two characters to re-evaluate their connection. Holden's presence, both comforting and mysterious, might be just what Victoria needs in this vulnerable moment. While their relationship has not been overtly romantic, there is potential for it to evolve as Victoria begins to open up to him in her grief. Whether Holden's role in Victoria's life is purely supportive or becomes more complicated is yet to be seen, but the emotional tension between them could become a focal point in future storylines. The family dynamic. Will Claire and Victoria grow closer or drift apart? As Claire struggles with the loss of her father and the absence of her mother's emotional support, her bond with Victoria will be tested. Although Victoria tries to provide comfort, it is unclear how Claire will react to this tragedy in the long term. Will the two women grow closer as they lean on each other for support, or will the unresolved grief and unspoken tensions between them create a rift? Claire's relationship with her mother has always been complex, and this tragedy may either strengthen their bond or tear them apart. The relationship between mother and daughter will be one of the most compelling aspects of Victoria's journey through grief. As the days pass, it will become clear whether they will find a way to heal together, or if the scars from Cole's death will leave them forever fractured. What lies ahead? As Victoria and Claire struggle to navigate the emotional aftermath of Cole's death, the road to healing is uncertain. With Holden possibly playing a larger role in Victoria's emotional recovery, and Claire still reeling from the loss of her father, the next steps in their respective journeys are full of emotional challenges. The presence of new characters and shifting relationships will no doubt complicate matters, but ultimately, Victoria and Claire's ability to face their grief together will determine their futures. In the coming weeks, YNR fans will be eagerly watching as Victoria faces the emotional and familial repercussions of Cole's death. What happens next will set the stage for new beginnings, or even more heartbreaking challenges, in this drama-filled world of love, loss, and recovery. This expanded narrative dives deeper into the aftermath of Cole's death, exploring Victoria's emotional journey, Claire's struggle with grief, and the potential relationships that could form as they cope with the loss. Let me know if you'd like further adjustments or additional details. The heartfelt bond between mother and daughter, grieving together after Cole's death. The loss of Cole Howard was a devastating blow for Victoria and Claire. Yet, in the midst of their grief, the mother and daughter found a surprising sense of solace in each other's company. As they sat together in the quiet of their home, talking about Cole, sharing memories of his kindness and his struggles, there were moments where laughter, albeit bittersweet, found its way between the tears. These small moments of levity were a testament to the deep bond between them. A bond that had been tested in the past but was now, in this sorrowful time, a source of comfort. Despite the heaviness that hung over them, Victoria and Claire clung to each other. The sound of their shared laughter, as they remembered Cole's quirks and his ability to lighten even the darkest moments, felt like a fleeting connection to the man they had lost. It was a simple, human moment in the midst of overwhelming sadness, reminding them both that even in grief, they could find something to hold on to, each other. However, this moment of connection, though powerful, would not be enough to shield Claire from the depth of her loss. As the days wore on, it became clear that the emotional weight was too much for her to handle on her own. Victoria, despite her own grief, would find herself stepping into the role of support once more, but the road ahead would be long and uncertain for both of them. Claire needed more than what Victoria could provide in terms of comfort. She needed the support of someone who could help her navigate the confusion, the fear, and the overwhelming sadness that had taken root in her heart. Kyle's absence, a silent void as time passed, Claire's reliance on her mother grew. But there was one glaring absence that made the weight of their grief even more unbearable: Kyle. With him still in Nice and out of reach, Claire had no immediate contact with the one person she felt closest to in her family. Kyle's absence left a void that neither Victoria nor Holden could easily fill. The distance between the Newmans and the Abbotts, amplified by the lack of communication, made everything feel even more isolating. Typically, Victoria would lean on her family in times of crisis, but this was different. With Kyle unreachable and many others in her extended family just as distant, Victoria had to rely on her own strength, a strength that was steadily diminishing. As the days stretched into weeks, the absence of her family felt more like a betrayal than a mere inconvenience. How was she supposed to hold it all together when the people she trusted the most were out of touch, scattered across the globe? And how could she support Claire when both of them were alone in their grief, unable to turn to their closest family members for the comfort they so desperately needed? In times like these, Victoria's natural response was to bury herself in her work. The more problems that arose, the harder she worked to solve them. It was her coping mechanism, one that she had perfected over the years. But now, with the weight of Cole's death pressing down on her, her usual methods no longer seemed to be enough. Her drive to work harder, to immerse herself in her responsibilities, was a way of avoiding the emotional devastation that threatened to overwhelm her. Holden's role, a beacon of support for Claire's emotional turmoil, was far from over. While Victoria tried her best to comfort her daughter, it became clear that Claire needed more than just maternal affection. She needed someone who could guide her through the panic, the anger, and the helplessness that consumed her. That someone was Holden Novak. Holden had been a steady presence in Claire's life during moments of crisis. When Claire had experienced panic and fear, Holden had been there to calm her, offering her a safe space to express herself without judgment. Now, as Cole's death loomed large over Claire's every thought, Holden would once again find himself stepping into the role of protector and confidant. His calm and steady demeanor would provide the reassurance that Claire needed in her most vulnerable moments. But Holden's support would not be limited to Claire's emotional needs. As the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, Claire discovered that her name was on a list given to Holden by Kane Ashby. This list, a possible clue to the complicated web of business and familial intrigue that surrounded the Newmans, added another layer of tension to Claire's grief. Would Holden now be tasked with protecting her from forces beyond their control? Would the connection between Claire and Holden deepen as they navigated the murky waters of business and family politics? As the days passed, the dynamic between Claire and Holden would evolve. Whether it became a source of comfort or a complicated romantic entanglement remained to be seen, but it was clear that Holden's influence on Claire would be pivotal in her healing process. The Newman family, an unreachable support system as the weeks went by, the continued absence of communication from the Newman and Abbott families became increasingly problematic. For Victoria, whose natural instinct was to take charge and handle everything herself, the silence from her loved ones only fueled her frustration and sorrow. Normally, she would have turned to her father or brothers for advice and support, but now, with everyone unreachable, Victoria had no one to turn to for help. Her coping mechanism, burying herself in work, was her attempt to regain some control over a situation that had spiraled far beyond her grasp. The more challenges that arose, the more she immersed herself in solving them. But this method of coping, although effective in the past, had its limits. The grief over Cole's death wasn't something that could be solved through work. It was a wound that needed time to heal, and no amount of business strategy could change that. What comes next for Victoria and Claire? With Victoria and Claire facing an uncertain future, the question remains, how will they move forward? Can Claire heal from the loss of her father with Holden's support? Will Victoria eventually find the strength to open up to those closest to her, or will she continue to isolate herself in her grief? As the weeks drag on, the emotional impact of Cole's death will continue to reverberate through their lives. Victoria's journey, though painful, may eventually lead her toward a new path. Whether that involves reconnecting with her family, leaning more on Holden, or finding healing through other means, the road ahead will not be easy. But with Claire by her side and Holden offering his support, Victoria might just find the strength to face the future once again. In the end, the bonds of family and friendship will determine the course of their healing, and the young and the restless will surely continue to unfold these emotional layers in ways that keep fans on the edge of their seats. This expanded narrative dives deeper into the emotional struggles faced by Victoria and Claire following Cole's death, highlighting the complexities of grief, familial bonds, and the role that Holden may play in Claire's recovery. Let me know if you'd like further adjustments or additional details.